Hello and welcome to the first proper mindset tips. This will be mindset tips number 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now if you haven't seen the series intro, I highly recommend you do that. You should be able to do it here depending on what device you're watching on, or the link will be in the text description. It will kind of explain everything about the purpose, the objective of these tips. So if you haven't seen that, go watch it. If you have, let's get started. Okay, tip number 1. Regular viewers will know that I constantly encourage you to do solo practice. I honestly believe that solo practice is one of the best ways to improve. But I have to admit that making the commitment or making the jump from the idea of solo practice to actually doing it can be quite daunting. What do? You go and book a court for like 40 minutes and you go down there and then you're like, that's a lot of time to fill. Now I make videos, and other people do, about what you can do when you're on court, but it's still a commitment of 40 minutes. So the first tip is about the next time you play a non-competitive match, agree with your opponent or your friend, the person you're playing, to do 5 minutes of solo practice each before you start. And this is how it works. You take 2 balls on court. One person holds one ball in their hand, their non-hitting hand, so it starts to get a little bit warm. The other person uses that ball in the knock-up, and you do the knock-up as normal. You knock up for a few minutes, hitting some straight shots, hitting some cross courts, hopefully moving around the court. Don't just stand there. You need to be physically moving. And then when you've finished, you say, right, let's start the solo practice. Now the person who is using the ball that was used in the knock-up, this person starts at the back. Doesn't matter if it's forehand or backhand. Probably best to start at the backhand though, and I'll explain why in a moment. And this person for 1 minute hits the ball up and down the wall, straight drives, trying to get the ball to come off the back wall and hit another straight drive. Now the other person whose ball is not as warm would start on the forehand side and go into the middle of the court and hit a minute's worth of block forehand volleys. You do the volleys because it's less important that the ball is as warm as it could be. And then after about a minute, the person who's volleying goes to the back of the court and hits the ball up and down the wall. And the person who was at the back of the court, they go to the middle of the court and they do their backhand volleys. And then after a minute, you go to the front of the court and you do about 30 seconds of soft little drops, maybe some trickle bows. Just keep your feet moving, just getting used to hitting the ball softly. And then when you've done that, which is 2.5 minutes, you swap sides. And you go through the whole process again. Now you can both start at the back this time because both of the balls should be quite warm. But if you want to, you can both start in the middle in case the ball has got a little bit colder. So you both start in the middle doing your volleys, then you move to the back of the court, then you both move to the front. Now change the type of ball that you use based on the conditions. I've got a website about that called squashball.info, which will be moving its name, but that doesn't matter for now. And make sure you use the right ball. And if that means a single yellow dot, then it means a single yellow dot. Even if one is a single yellow dot and the match is with a double yellow, that's fine as well. So that's the first tip. Get into the process of doing some solo practice, and it will actually help you play better squash on the time that you play, and begin the process of feeling more comfortable about just doing some solo practice. Tip number 2 is about creating good habits, not worrying so much about objectives. Now in the future I'll be talking about how to set goals, how to make them useful for you. But the reality is that I would prefer a player that I'm working with has really good habits rather than just thinking about objectives and goals. I want to win this match, I want to do this, I want to do that. No, just get into the habit of playing properly, of training effectively, of resting when needed, because your habits are the foundation of success. Imagine you've got 2 people, one who has very clear objectives, very ambitious objectives, but doesn't really do the work, doesn't get up when they need to, doesn't train when they need to. And then you've got another person who's very vague about their objectives. Perhaps they don't even have any objectives, but they train. They train regularly, they've got good habits, they are doing what they need to do. They're doing the work. They're going to improve more than the person who knows exactly what they want, but doesn't do the work. It's a simple idea, but it makes a huge difference in your life. So instead of setting clear objectives without being able to do the work, start by setting good habits. Now, what that means for you could be, like tip 1, getting into regular solo practice, getting into lobbing when you're at the front of the court and you're under a lot of pressure. Basically, whatever you feel is a good habit for your squash, start doing that and focus on that more than focusing on winning the world championships or your club championships, because that doesn't come without good habits. Tip number 3, well, it's about motivation. Now, we've probably watched those training montages on Rocky and those types of movies, and we sort of say, yes, next week I'm going to get out and I'm going to get up early and I'm going to start training. And what we have to recognize is just like our body needs energy, our motivation needs feeding as well. So find what motivates you. And I think the classic example is a really good one, which is the boxer. You know, the boxer takes a picture of his opponent and he sort of sticks it in the mirror so that every time he's brushing his teeth or she's brushing her teeth and they're just in the mirror, they look at this person and you're what motivates me. Now, I'm not suggesting you do that. I'm not saying that you go to your squash club and say, do you mind if I take a picture of you? And then you stick it on the, I mean, no, of course not. What I'm suggesting is find what works for you. Now, YouTube is a great resource for this sort of thing because there are lots of actually motivation videos where you can just watch and they got some sort of inspirational quotes and those kind of things. And that can be really useful. Or another one can be watching live squash. I have to admit, and I think probably a few people will be surprised, I don't enjoy watching squash on TV very much. Partly because I'm so frustrated that I can't play, I'm not part of that world. But also because I've been in big tournaments, I've been in the audience, and the atmosphere is incredibly motivating. I would rather go to one tournament once a year than watch squash matches all year long. That's not to say that Squash TV don't do a great job, because they do a fantastic job, and Joey and Paul do a great job in commentating. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is it doesn't motivate me. I learn from it and it's interesting, but it doesn't make me want to get on court so much. Maybe you're different. Maybe watching squash matches is enough. But being at a live squash match, that's what really motivates me, because of the sound more than anything. But that's for another video. So that's what I'm saying in this particular tip. Find what motivates you and use it regularly. Don't feel that the motivation always has to come from you, the fire in your belly. Don't feel that you need to be that person. Get it from outside and keep the fire in your belly burning. And you'll find then that you'll be able to get your good habits and do the things that you should do to improve your squash. Tip number 4 is about bad habits. Now, we'll be talking about bad habits and good habits and creating and keeping good habits in future videos. But here we often talk about New Year's resolutions and those kind of ideas. And what we do in general is we get too ambitious. We think that we need this huge plan. We think that we need to do a lot of things to improve, but we don't. We just need little steps. And it might be a cliche, but each little step that you take every day will eventually get you somewhere. So for this tip, I'd like you to identify one bad habit that you have. Perhaps it's on court, perhaps it's how you train, could be a bunch of things. For example, maybe you rush your serve. Maybe you are rushed by the server. So the bad habit is, instead of accepting that serve, change the routine. That's going to be a future tip, but that was just an idea. Another one could be that you don't heat up properly. Now, regular viewers will know that I don't like the phrase warm up. I don't think you should be warm when you start playing a match. You should be hot, and you should go through a process, and there are videos on my channel that will explain how to do that. But that's an example. A lot of people don't warm up, and yes, you know who I'm talking about. All right. Now, what you want to do is you want to identify one little bad, almost insignificant bad habit, and replace it with a good one. Again, we'll be talking more about how to replace habits specifically. But in this case, all you're going to say is, I'm going to get to court a little bit earlier and I'm going to do my heat up. I'm going to not allow my opponent to rush me when he serves. I'm just going to take a few more minutes. I'm going to do something else. But you identify the habit and you say, what is the replacement? What is the trigger that causes me into this bad habit? And I'm going to change that. I'm going to reassess what happens. I'm going to take control of the situation and I'm going to choose to do something differently. You can post your ideas in the comments and then other players can learn from them. But all it is identify one simple, changeable bad habit. Don't change the world. Just change a little bit about how you see something, and then when you feel confident, you can start doing other things. So that was tip 4. I watch a lot of videos on YouTube and it absolutely drives me crazy when they end with please subscribe. So please subscribe. This is a video that YouTube thinks is a good fit for you based on what you've been watching. And this is a playlist of all the mindset tips, which hopefully you've been watching as well. Now, remember, do something every single day to improve your squash.